Confronted my fiancé about his mom calling me a gold digger with autism, he refused to defend me, leaving me feeling alone. I'm a 31-year-old woman, and in just a few months, July, I'm meant to marry my fiancé, who's 36. We met through a mutual friend a few years back, clicked right away, and things moved forward naturally for us. He really is the perfect guy in every way that matters. But there's one thing that always casts a shadow: his mother, Katie. From the very beginning, Katie has been openly critical of me. She has no filter. She's told my fiancé right to his face that he could do better, and has even called me, more than once, an uneducated slum. For a while, I learned to ignore her. I've dealt with worse and my skin is thick, until he proposed, and Katie's attitude took a turn for the genuinely cruel. I'll never forget going to visit her a few days ago so we could share the news of our engagement. We were so happy, so excited. My future husband had this proud smile as he showed her the ring, and the first thing she did was grimace, shooting me this glare that could have cracked glass. She barely looked at the ring before turning to her son and, I swear, said, "Are you really going to marry that, our word, gold digger?" Silence fell for a second before my fiancé just kind of laughed, nervously, and told me we should leave. The whole drive home, I felt numb, like I'd been dunked in ice water. I want to add, for context, that I have high-functioning autism. It usually doesn't affect my daily life too much, but I do struggle with interpreting people's emotions, and moments like this cut insanely deep. When we got home, I just broke down sobbing. It was humiliating, her words, the look in her eyes, how alone I felt. I asked my fiancé, nearly begging through tears, to talk to his mom, to set boundaries with her and tell her this absolutely has to stop. He just held me and told me he loved me. He said he would try to get better about this, but he couldn't bring himself to say anything to his mom. When I pressed him, desperate for any reason, he just repeated that he couldn't do anything about it and left the room. Later that evening, his sister sent me a message. It read, "You can't make him choose between you and his mother." I sat there, turning those words over and over, completely bewildered, because I realized, I never asked him to choose. All I wanted was for him to stand up for me, even a little. And now I feel completely lost, stuck between the woman who hates me and the man who says I'm all he wants, yet can't face her on my behalf. Update 1. My fiancé came home the next morning, just acting like everything was perfectly normal, like nothing had happened. He didn't even mention the fight we'd had. I could hardly believe it. It was as if that ugly scene just didn't exist for him. That night, I couldn't take it anymore, so I sat him down and asked him why on earth he was acting like everything was fine. His response? It was a minor fight, and we shouldn't dwell on it. I felt fury bubbling up inside me. That fight wasn't minor for me at all. It rattled me to the core and made me question our entire relationship. I told him exactly that, how much it shook me, and he just scoffed. Looking at him, I asked, "Is it really not a big deal that your mother called me an R-word gold digger?" He scoffed again and mumbled something about how she's older now and doesn't even know what those things mean. That was it for me. His mother is 63 years old, and she has always acted this way. She hasn't changed a bit since the day I met her years ago. I felt something shift inside me then. I grabbed a bag, called my friend, and left. She came to pick me up, and I've been staying at her place since. Now, I'm sitting here, unsure where my life is heading. Yesterday, my friend sent me something that made my jaw drop, a post my fiancé made somewhere online, twisting everything and painting me as the villain. I couldn't let that be the only side anyone hears, so here's mine. We've been together for a while, and honestly, things were really good until the last few days. His mother, 63, raised him and his sister alone. He always said she was incredibly supportive, and I could tell he adored her. She was always a little overprotective of him, the kind of mother who can never quite let go. She never openly said anything to my face, but I always got the sense she couldn't fully accept me. This all came to a head last weekend. We went to her house to announce our engagement. Instead of congratulations, I got a cold shoulder and, eventually, a rude and cutting remark about my autism. I was stunned. We left quickly, and honestly, I was shattered. My fiancé did try to comfort me after. He ordered takeout, drew me a bath, put on a movie. He did everything right in the moment. He tried to explain it away, saying his mom is getting older and isn't fully in control of what she says anymore. But I couldn't let it go. I kept pushing him, needing him to understand just how much those words hurt, not just her remark, but his brushing it off as just how she is now. I know he doesn't get it, maybe because his bond with his mother is so strong, and mine with my own mom is, well, different. In the heat of it all, he snapped back at me, saying there was nothing he could do about it. He ended up staying at his mom's that night. By the next morning, when he finally came home, we ended up in yet another argument. I could see him getting more and more frustrated. To him, I seemed to be blowing his mother's comments way out of proportion, and he kept insisting that her age somehow excuses everything. He just kept repeating, "She's old, she doesn't understand this fully." Hearing that over and over, it was like a wall going up between us. Eventually, I left. I haven't seen him since. Now his friend is reaching out, saying I'm the for choosing my mom over her. But the truth is, I don't see it that way. I just needed him to stand up for me, to treat what happened as the big deal it truly was, but instead, I got excuses and silence. And now, I'm left questioning everything about where we go from here. Update 2. I am so utterly exhausted right now, and I pray this is the last update I'll ever have to give about this situation. My fiancé, and I use that word loosely at this point, posted online earlier today about our issues. After our last explosive fight, I haven't seen him in person at all. I heard that people weren't exactly on his side, and, honestly, that was a small comfort amid all this chaos. Not long after his post, he called me. Against my better judgment, I answered. The man who once promised me forever sounded completely unhinged. First, he was sobbing, literally begging me to come back. Seconds later, he snapped and started screaming at me to get the F back here. Hearing him like that was gut-wrenching. This was the man I thought I was going to marry, and now he just sounded, well, psychotic. Just in case, I decided to record the call. I needed some kind of evidence if things escalated. After that, I hung up and blocked him everywhere, phone, socials, everything. But it didn't end there. Not even an hour later, he showed up at my friend's house, totally out of control, shouting things that I can't even repeat. At that point, I had no choice. I called the police. They showed up and took him away. After that ordeal, I decided to leave and check into a hotel. My friend has been a rock through this, but I couldn't risk him showing up at her place again and putting her in danger. Right now, all I want is for this to finally be over. I'm so tired. I hope this truly is the end of everything with him. Update 3. I know the title sounds rough, but just hear me out for a moment. I'm a 36-year-old guy, and I recently went through a breakup with my ex-fiancé, who's 31. The split happened because of some tension between her and my mom. A few comments my mom made were definitely out of line, and I can admit that. But my ex blew it way out of proportion, packed a bag, blocked me on everything, and hasn't spoken a word to me since. After she left, I just tried to give her space. I didn't call her, I didn't try to show up anywhere, I completely backed off for months. I honestly figured she needed time and I respected that. Then, a few days ago, I was wandering through a second-hand shop, and I stumbled across an old, specific edition of a book she absolutely loved. She used to talk about this version all the time but never managed to find it herself. As soon as I saw it, I thought of her, just instantly. I picked it up without thinking too hard about it, feeling like maybe it would make her smile. When I got home, I wrote a short little note on the inside cover. Nothing dramatic, nothing romantic, just, thought you might like this. No pressure, take care. I didn't even sign it, but I figured she'd recognize the gesture and know it was from me. I mailed it to her apartment and honestly, that was it. No expectations, no hidden agenda. Just a book she used to love, sent her way. A day or two after I sent it, her best friend, who still follows me on social media, reached out to me, saying I had crossed a line, especially because my ex is dating someone new now. I didn't know for sure she was seeing anyone, but honestly, why should that matter? I didn't send her a love letter or a plea to get back together. It was just a book that I knew she cared about. I do understand boundaries, believe me, I wasn't trying to trample over hers. But to me, this didn't feel like breaking any rules. I saw something she used to cherish, and I just wanted to pass it along. I didn't ask for anything in return. In fact, I never even expected a response. So, was I really out of line for this? Was it wrong for me to send her that book? For real, what's the big deal about that? Update 4. I'm not even sure if anyone will actually hear me, but I need to talk about what's been happening. Ever since my ex and I broke up, things have spiraled in the weirdest ways. Once he realized I was dating again, the passive-aggressive gifts started arriving. One of the most absurd was this book he sent, justifying it by claiming it was my favorite, loving your spouse when you feel like walking away. That was never on any of my reading lists, let alone a favorite. It made me shake my head. Then, about a month ago, word got to me that my ex had a new girlfriend. I felt this huge sense of relief, almost like maybe he'd finally move on and stop orbiting my life. If only I'd been so lucky. The harassment started soon after. Out of the blue, DMs arrived from a girl with comments like, "You're pathetic, no wonder he's happier now," and he told me what you did to him. I blocked her as soon as I read them, but like a nightmarish hydra, for every account I shut down, 2 more seemed to pop up. It got so overwhelming that eventually, I had to make all of my social media totally private, just for some peace. 2 weeks later, it somehow got worse. I was just out, enjoying a simple dinner on a date, not thinking about him at all, when suddenly my ex and his new girlfriend showed up at the same restaurant, and he immediately started shouting, accusing me, loudly, of stalking him, right there in public. I was stunned. His girlfriend, of course, was there to capture everything on her phone, filming as if this were all some performance. She posted it on TikTok, tagging me as that crazy ex. That's me, apparently. The crazy one. The video blew up more than I could have believed. It didn't hit millions, but it got shared enough that people in my life recognized it and started texting me, asking if that really was me. Then the strangers began to pile in, dropping comments about how I was a homewrecker, making judgments without having any real idea of what actually happened or who I am. Being painted as this villain in someone else's story is exhausting. I keep catching myself just wanting to drop everything and move away, to vanish and start over where none of this could follow me, but my job just doesn't give me that option. I'm so tired. I just want my own life back. Update 5. 2 days ago my phone pinged with that little notification I've only ever seen on TikTok. AirTag detected moving with you. I was in a rideshare on my way home from work, so I brushed it off, figured it belonged to the driver or someone who'd been in the car before me. It went away after a while and I forgot about it. Last night it happened again, only this time it followed me into my apartment and kept popping up. That cold, electric feeling started crawling up my back. I turned my place upside down. Nothing. I tried the play sound option and stood still in the silence, heart thrumming. It was faint, but it was there, in that weird in-between space near my window where I keep my tote and my umbrella. I pulled the tote apart and found it, an AirTag taped onto the bottom liner, wrapped in black electrical tape like someone had put actual effort into making sure I wouldn't notice. I didn't even think. I put it in a metal cookie tin my friend had given me with homemade brownies last month, snapped the lid shut, and drove straight to the police station. I still had the old case number from when he showed up at my friend's house, so they attached it and took the AirTag. The officer on duty was calm in a way that made me feel anchored. He said they'd request the registration from Apple and, if it came back tied to a person, they'd move fast. I went back to the hotel and slept with my shoes by the door. This morning a detective called. It was registered to him. And, here's the part I can barely wrap my head around, the account activity showed it had been paired and unpaired multiple times over the last month. Her name popped up too, his girlfriend's, because it had been added to her Find My as a shared item for a stretch before it went back to his. The detective asked if I wanted to file for a protective order. I was in his office within the hour, signing papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. A judge granted a temporary order the same afternoon. They served him at his mother's house. If the universe has any sense of timing, it showed it tonight. I got a DM from a brand new account with a selfie of the girlfriend holding up her driver's license, like proof of life. She asked me not to block her for 5 minutes. Then she sent screenshot after screenshot, him in a group chat with his buddies, bragging about content and asking which restaurant I still liked because he wanted a good backdrop. Him texting her to be ready to film and don't stop no matter what. Him forwarding my building's posted delivery hours with, Mom says Thursdays are easiest. There was even a voice memo from his mother, the kind you don't expect to hear outside of a movie, telling them to lean into it because she's always dramatic, it won't be hard. The girlfriend told me they fought tonight because she wouldn't give him her phone, and he grabbed it and threw it against the wall. The screen cracked and she ran to her car with the pieces and messaged me from a borrowed iPad at her cousin's place. She said she didn't know, not really, that she believed him about me until the AirTag news popped up and the detective's call made it real. She said she took the video down and reported the fake accounts she'd made. She said she'd talk to the police if they asked. She said sorry, over and over, until I told her she didn't need to keep saying it. My job's legal team got involved, which still feels surreal to type. I told my manager what was happening a while back, so when I forwarded the police report and the temporary order, HR looped in an attorney we have on retainer. She's the kind of woman who speaks in complete, razor-clean sentences. By evening she had platform requests out for removals, a formal cease and desist drafted to him and his mother, and flagged my name with security in my building. She scheduled me for a lock change tomorrow morning and arranged a time for a police standby while a courier collects the last of his things from storage. He doesn't get to come. No one does. There's a dull throb behind my left eye, the sort of pain that arrives after you've been bracing for so long you forgot you were clenching your jaw. I'm drinking water like it's some kind of cure. My friend dropped off a fresh set of pajamas at the front desk and a grocery store bouquet that smells like a field if you close your eyes, and for the first time in weeks my hand stopped buzzing. I'm not naive enough to think a judge's signature flips a switch and makes a person like him disappear, but there's paper now. There's a case number. There are other people standing between him and me. The detective said he'll call when the statements are scheduled. The girlfriend asked if she could send me one last thing, and it was a photo of an envelope addressed to me in his mother's handwriting, postmarked last week but never sent. On the back, in tiny careful letters, she'd written, "Some girls don't know when to quit." I don't know why, but that made me laugh. It broke something open and I laughed until I cried. Update 6. Courtrooms look like they do in shows until you're actually inside one and the air is too cold and you can hear the hum of the fluorescent lights coming through your ribs. The victim advocate met me in the hallway with a paper cup of bad coffee and a voice that was steady enough to borrow for a while. I wore the only blazer I own and kept my hands locked around the strap of my bag like it was carrying my spine. He was already there when I walked in, sitting beside his mother. He had on that blue shirt he wore to our first date, collar mashed flat, a tie that didn't belong to any outfit I've ever seen him wear. She didn't look at me, not really, she aimed instead at that space next to me, like if she avoided my face long enough I might just erase. It wasn't dramatic the way I thought it would be. No banging gavel, no gasps. The detective spoke first, clean and methodical, like he'd practiced in a mirror so my whole life wouldn't shake when he said, the AirTag was registered to him. He held up printouts of timestamps. He said the word paired like it was a nail being tapped into wood. Then she came in, His girlfriend, with a bandaged thumb and a phone that was more fractured than screen inside a Ziploc bag, and she asked the judge if she could read. Her voice shook at the first word and then found itself. She read the messages, the "be ready to film," the "don't stop," the part where his mother said lean into it, and the courtroom felt smaller, like the ceiling had dropped a few inches to listen. He tried to talk over her. He said I was misunderstanding things, he said his mother didn't mean it like that, he said we'd been blowing this up, and the judge lifted a hand without looking up. "Sir," she said, not unkindly, in the same tone you use when you catch a child reaching for a burner. He stopped, but not at all. His knee bounced like it might leap off without him. When the judge said 1 year, it was just 3 syllables, but my body heard them like a chord. She said my name and the distance he had to keep from it. She said no direct or indirect contact, and then she added, including through family, and the way Katie inhaled sounded like a match being struck. The judge looked over her glasses and asked her if she understood. Katie's mouth pressed so thin it went white. I think she wanted to spit and discovered she'd run out. In the hallway after, she came toward me with something in her hand. An envelope, the same kind of off-white with navy flecks that I'd seen in the photo. The victim advocate stepped between us and said, "No," and a deputy peeled away from the wall like he'd been grown there to do exactly that. The envelope fell. It landed face up. The handwriting had my name in a careful cursive from another decade. The deputy picked it up like a baby bird and told me it would go to evidence. Katie stared at me the way someone stares at a house they once owned that is no longer theirs. I thought that would be the crescendo, but the day kept going. The locksmith arrived at my apartment with a tool bag that rattled like cutlery and a sticker on his clipboard that said, "Today is the day," which made me laugh in a way that hurt my head. The building manager stood in the doorway with security and watched the deadbolt come off like a tooth. A courier with the same tired eyes everyone in this story seems to have now signed for a plastic storage bin and 2 garment bags and left without a word. There were rain spots on his sleeves. For hours it smelled like brass and WD-40 and the eucalyptus candle I keep burning until it's just wax and memory. The detective called before sunset. He said they'd executed a search warrant on his car and his room at his mother's house. He said the words calmly, like the weather, like, "We found rolls of tape, packaging receipts for air tags, printouts of my building's delivery schedule folded inside a church bulletin." He said there was a second tracker in a box with rope and a label maker which he noted, and I pretended I didn't hear because my throat closed. He said they'd pulled the username lists that matched the fake accounts, all spun up from the same IP. He said, "We're forwarding it all to the prosecutor," and then, softer, "You did the right thing." I wanted to tell him that right has been a moving target for months and I have just been lurching after it, bumping into furniture. She texted me later, the girlfriend, with a photo of a paper stamped with a seal. Her own order. Her own boundaries, inked by someone in a black robe with winter dry hands. Her message was shorter this time. No apologies, just, "I have one too." I sent back a single thumbs up and then typed it again, 2, 3, until it looked stupid and honest, and left it at that. The only time my breath hitched again was after dark when someone set down a bouquet outside my door. Not roses, not anything dramatic, those tight, grocery store carnations in a color that doesn't exist in nature. Security was already in the hallway, because they had been right outside my door since the lock change, and one of them lifted the cellophane without touching it with his fingertips and shook his head. It had a card. No words. Just a heart drawn in ballpoint and a tiny bit of lint stuck to the glue where a stamp would go if a person didn't plan to run it up the stairs themselves. They took it. The hallway smelled sweet and cheap for an hour. By morning there was a voicemail from the prosecutor's office, a woman who introduced herself and then apologized for saying my name wrong and then said it again perfectly. She talked about charges, words like stalking and unlawful tracking, and dates, a calendar suddenly growing teeth. She mentioned a victim advocate assigned to their side and told me to save a number in my phone. I sat on the floor of my kitchen, back to the cabinets, and added it under the name light switch. I don't know why, it just made sense at the time. I know better than to say, "It's over." It isn't. These things don't end, they unspool. But there are knots now that aren't mine to tie. The TikTok is gone. The grocery store carnations got replaced by sunflowers from the farmer's market because my friend has a sense of humor about foreshadowing and brought them in a jar that used to hold jam. I took a shower without propping the door open with a shoe. I slept with my face turned to the window because the lock is new and the hardware is solid and the night was just a dark sky again, not a lid. There was one last thing, a mail slot sound I hadn't heard in years because everything is packages and pins and couriers now. An envelope slid through like a memory. The outside was blank. Inside was a single page of lined paper, torn from a legal pad, with a sentence in that same tight careful handwriting. "We could have been family." The building camera caught her hand, the sleeve of her cardigan, the cheap ring she wears on her index finger. Security buzzed her out of the lobby and wrote up the incident like a recipe. The detective already has the page. The judge will have it next week. I ate a peach over my sink this afternoon and it ran down my wrist and onto my elbow and I didn't even reach for a towel. The field smell of the flowers hit the steam from my mug and made something good out of the air. My jaw is still catching itself clamped sometimes, but then it remembers that it can let go. I keep the cookie tin visible on a shelf now, not because I need the metal, but because it feels like proof that I am not crazy. There is a lid between me and the worst of it. I can hear the hum of the building, the small sounds of other people making dinner, and none of it is about me. For the first time in months, I am in a room and the room is just a room. Update 7. The call came before the kettle clicked. That new number in my phone labeled light switch lit up the dark on my nightstand, and when I answered, the prosecutor's voice was the kind that has learned to walk slowly across ice. Charges filed. Arraignment this afternoon. Did I want to be there? I said yes and didn't know if I meant it until my hand was already pulling the blazer off the chair. The courthouse again, same hum, same strange chill in the air that finds your bones. Today it smelled faintly like wet wool and pencil shavings. I sat on the same wooden bench as last time and watched the minute hand hop, then hop again, the way nervous birds do on a fence. He didn't come through the door. He blinked alive on a monitor, orange fabric where a tie used to be. The camera leaned a little like it was tired. He looked around a room I couldn't see and then stared straight ahead, and for a second I had that old muscle memory in my chest, the reflex to make space for him. It passed. The prosecutor read, words that have weight only in a mouth that knows how to hold them: stalking, unlawful tracking, harassment. She listed dates like steps. She didn't have to lift the printouts again, the judge already had a stack. The defense attorney said phrases that sound like scarves: isolated incident, misunderstanding, lapse in judgment, and the judge didn't lean either way. She just wrote. He tried to speak and his sound cut in and out, the courtroom catching only pieces. The judge lifted a hand again and he deflated back into pixels. Bail was a math problem I didn't know the answer to until it was said out loud. Numbers and conditions, and then a line I didn't expect. If released, a custodian needed to sign, someone to say they would keep him where the court said he had to be. The judge turned her eyes to the gallery and said his mother's name. Katie stood like a child being called to the front of a classroom she thought she owned. For the first time in all of this, she didn't look at me or around me or through me. She looked at the judge and blinked slowly, like she was waking up underwater. The judge explained the word. What it meant to be custodian. The responsibility. The penalties if he stepped over 1 inch of the line. There was a pause big enough to walk around in. Katie's mouth opened and closed and opened again. She said he didn't need that. She said he wasn't dangerous. She said this was theater. The judge didn't argue with her, she just repeated the conditions, patient as a metronome. Katie's hand went to the strap of her purse and pressed like she was checking for a pulse. Then, very quietly, like it hurt to touch the sentence, she said, I can't. It was one word, and it was the first honest thing I've ever heard her say. He heard it too. The camera didn't zoom, but I could feel the drop through the cable that was his face, something inside him folding up like a bad chair. The defense attorney looked down at his papers and didn't pick up any of them. When the judge said remanded, it didn't echo in the room. It just settled. Outside, the concrete steps were wet from a rain that had already moved on. I stood under the overhang and watched people walk past with their coats unbuttoned because the air had decided to be warmer than the calendar said it should be. The advocate handed me a tissue I didn't end up using, and we both pretended we weren't listening to the sound a woman makes when she realizes she has run out of excuses for a son she built out of them. By late afternoon, the detective was on my phone again. His voice was the same weather report steady, but there was a new edge under it, like he'd sharpened something. They'd added the envelope to a separate case and sent a summons to Katie for harassment. Not a pair of handcuffs in a hallway, not a dramatic door slam. Paper. Another line with her name on it that belongs to someone else now. There would be a hearing. Did I want to be notified? I said yes, and this time I knew I meant it. I went back to my apartment and found the locksmith's fingerprints still in gray dust around the new strike plate, little moons where a tool had held and turned. The building had left a note about a package at the desk, and my stomach did the thing an elevator does on a bad day. I took the elevator anyway. The concierge slid the box across to me with 2 hands and kept his face arranged into the neutral mask they must teach at whatever school you go to for jobs like his. Inside was a kettle I had ordered on a sale weeks ago and forgotten, its chrome curves winking at my own reflection until I laughed, sudden and stupid with relief. I boiled water for the sake of boiling it and made tea strong enough to drown a spoon. While it was cooling, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I'd saved under a name that wasn't hers because it made it easier to look at. The girlfriend. A photo of an empty closet. A strip of bare wall where a poster had been, its ghost in cleaner paint. I'm out, she wrote. My cousin let me crash. I brought the voice memo in and gave a statement. I'm going to send you a screenshot, but only if you want it. I told her to keep it with a detective, and my phone let me watch 3 dots appear and disappear and appear again until she wrote, okay. Then just, I'm sorry, once, plain, and it didn't bounce off this time. At dusk, my mother called me. She doesn't call. We text on holidays, we send each other pictures of food like postcards from foreign countries, and we keep it all skimming on the surface where it can't bruise. Her name lit up and my body made a sound I didn't know was in it. I answered and said hi like a question. She didn't ask about the case, about the judge, about letters slipped under doors. She said she had made soup because the grocery store had parsnips that looked like they were grown with care. She said she had put too much time in by mistake and it tasted like a forest in a good way. She asked if she could bring me some, just leave it with the front desk if I was busy. I told her to come upstairs. When she arrived, she stood in my doorway holding a pot wrapped in a towel with a pattern of cherries from my childhood kitchen, and her elbows shook slightly in the same way mine do when I'm carrying a heavy thing. We ate at my counter out of mismatched bowls because the rest were still drying in the rack. She didn't ask for the story, she didn't make me tell it. She told me about a neighbor's new dog and the way the magnolia on her street had tricked itself into believing it was spring already. She rinsed the bowls and I let her. Night came on like it always does, steady and sure. I took the cookie tin down from the shelf and touched the lid with my palm until I could feel my heartbeat bounce back. The kettle clicked off and the apartment was very quiet in the way that used to scare me and now feels like a half-sleeping cat. On my doormat, someone had added a new layer of cheap indoor-outdoor carpet, a thicker gray that doesn't curl at the corners when it rains, a small kindness from a maintenance guy who pretends he doesn't hear the way I double-check his name every time. There will be more dates and rooms and fluorescent hum. There will be typed lines with my name in them and other people's signatures that have more power than mine. But this afternoon the judge said no into a microphone and it traveled down a wire to a place with no windows, and a woman finally told the truth about what she could and could not hold. I stood in my kitchen with the window cracked exactly as much as it could be without setting off the sensor, and the air moved across my wrists and made the tiny hairs there stand up. For a second the city felt like a place that was breathing with me and not at me. Update 8. Discovery isn't paper in a TV show, it's a beige envelope slid across a desk that smells like toner and cold coffee, with my name broomed across the tab in someone's tidy block letters. The prosecutor had me sit in a little glass room with a wall clock that ticked like it was practicing for percussion class. She said, "I'll be right outside," and left the thumb drive in the USB slot like a key in an ignition. Jail calls begin with a voice like an elevator. This call is subject to monitoring and recording. He talked anyway. He always talks anyway. The first thing was his breath too close to the mic, and then Katie's voice, that familiar starch, answering on the second ring, like she'd been waiting with the phone up to her mouth. He told her the judge was wrong, that this was all theater, that my name, was milking it. He said he could still fix the narrative if he could just get a message to me, and the room got smaller. Katie said she'd ask around at church, that pastor might counsel me if he knew what kind of girl I am. He asked if she'd talk to the one who filmed, and Katie said, she'll do what she's told, but she's dramatic when she's scared, and my hands went cold. Then he asked why she'd said I can't in court, like he was testing the shape of the words with his teeth, and there was a sound from her that wasn't crying or laughing. "I won't go to jail for you," she said, flat as a table. "I've already done my part." Another call, different day. The automated voice again, the click, and this time he was talking too fast, the way he did when he had a script he didn't believe in yet. He told a friend they needed content for when he got out, that the Crazy X arc was a gold mine if we do it tight. He asked if someone could get a shot outside her building. "Don't show the number, be smart," and the friend mumbled something about not wanting to be involved in a legal thing. There was a shuffle and a beep and the call cut off mid-sentence. The prosecutor knocked once on the glass and didn't come in. She let me sit with it until my heartbeat climbed back down from my throat. By afternoon, the DA's office sent a copy of a letter from Apple that felt like getting your own medical chart in the mail. Dates, times, an entire skeleton of pings, lost mode enabled. Precision finding active. Shared item removed. A map that would look like a child's connect the dots if the dots weren't me. They had pulled the same logs from her account, her name, the window where she'd had access, the removal. There's nothing theoretical about blue lines underlining your life. Katie's summons day landed on a Tuesday that insisted on being sunny. She wore a cardigan the color of wilted lettuce and a pearl pin that sat on her collar like it disapproved of everything. The judge read the charge in a voice that didn't bend for any of us. When Katie stepped to the podium, she tried on her old tricks first, head tilted, sweetness poured thick, but the judge dealt only in shapes and dates. "Do you understand the conditions?" she asked. "No contact of any kind." Katie opened her mouth to say we could have been family, and the judge's hand went up, the softest stop sign. "Ma'am." The advocate beside me exhaled so quietly I felt it more than heard it. In the hallway afterward, a woman I didn't know touched my elbow with 2 fingers and said she was from their church. She wore a name tag on a lanyard and smelled like baby powder. "We're praying for you," she said, and then, as if reading off a recipe card, "and if you feel led to withdraw, I." Watched the words leave her mouth like tiny moths. The advocate stepped between us in a way that was half choreography, half instinct. "That's not appropriate," she said, and the deputy who had lived against the wall all morning took down a name without changing his face. The prosecutor called me before I got home and said the phrase witness tampering like she was testing a door to see if it was locked. "Save the voicemail," she added, and it turned out the woman had already left one, her voice softer, saying God puts burdens where he knows they'll do the most good. I added it to the pile. The pile has corners now. My building security man asked if I had a minute and led me to the back office, the one where they keep packages waiting for holidays and small dogs being watched temporarily. He rolled the footage back to a rectangle of lobby light and pressed play. Katie's sleeve again, the cardigan's limp green, the hand that thinks it owns every doorknob. She pressed the intercom and didn't speak. She waited for the buzz that never came. After a minute, she turned and opened the mail slot and looked at the slit like it might swallow her arm whole. She didn't feed it anything this time. She just stared, then walked out with her back very straight. The maintenance guy who never remembers my name said, "She looks like my mom when she forgot where she put the sugar," and then apologized for saying it. We filed the clip anyway. The girlfriend sent a photo of a Google document open on an iPad with a spiderweb screen, the title at the top so straight it looked like a joke, "Rollout, the Crazy Ex." Comments in different colors like party balloons. His name on lines that said Restaurant 1? She still likes the one with the tile wall and use concerned caption so you look reasonable. A comment bubble from a user with her name beside it, her February self, saying, "Are you sure?" A reply from Katie's email, yes, her email, I know the shape of her name now even blurred, that read, "Lean into it." The detective took a screenshot and didn't swear, but his jaw did. By dinner, the prosecutor had added another line to their stack, attempt to violate the order through a third party. She said it the way she says all the other words, steady as same-day rain. He is still in orange. The camera in that courtroom still leans like it needs a shim. But the list grows teeth, and every tooth points away from me. At home the kettle clicked and didn't make me jump. The parsnip soup pot from my mother slept on a trivet like a well-fed cat and the apartment smelled faintly of time because everything does now. I wrote a work email about a deadline and then another that used the word delighted without me feeling like I was lying. The victim compensation form came through with a state seal and I filled it out at my counter, adding the lock change, the hotel, the time I forgot how to eat and then remembered in front of the sink with half a peach. When it got dark, I went downstairs and pinned a small, cheap solar light into the pot of basil on the stoop for no reason except that I could put a small circle of brightness exactly where I wanted it. On the way back up, I passed a neighbor's open door where a toddler was inventing a song about noodles with the seriousness of a surgeon. The elevator took me up without checking my pockets. In my kitchen, the cookie tin caught the overhead and threw back a dull little moon. There will be more rooms with humming lights, more sentences with my name arranged inside them by people in suits who carry highlighters like weapons. Today, though, a stranger with a lanyard said something she thought would move me and it slid off like water. A judge said no again and it stuck. A woman who once pressed hate into envelopes got her own inked lines to live inside. And somewhere between the clock ticks and the kettles click, I could feel the floor under me being exactly that, a floor, not a trap, not a stage, not a wire. Just wood and screws and the ordinary math of a building holding.